In the previous video, we learned about Salesforce data model and schema builder. We will continue working with the same data model we discussed in the previous video. If you have not yet gone through the same, click on the link provided. Here, we look at the object manager and look at one of the standard objects in greater detail to understand all the functionalities involved. So this is the data model we saw in the previous video. It has standard objects like accounts, contacts, opportunities, etc. And all the objects shown in maroon color basically are standard objects. It also has some custom objects that we are not going into at this stage. We will look at the accounts object in greater detail. Here are the objects we saw in the schema builder video. What we see here are the objects, fields, and relationships. Now we will move to the object manager and we'll see how these fields and relationships can be set up. So let's look at the org first. That's your home screen. Let's look at the accounts tab. If you don't see any account, it may be because you're on the recently viewed list. So change the list view to all accounts and pin that all accounts. So next time we go to the accounts tab, we will by default be brought to the all accounts view. Let's look at one of the accounts, Basil Inc. So these are all the sample accounts that Salesforce has provided in this org. If we look at the details tab for this account, here we see all the fields that we saw in the schema builder. So account owner, rating, phone number, account name, parent account. These are all the fields that we saw in the object. And now when we move to the object manager, we'll see how these fields have been set up. So go to setup, click on setup, go to the object manager tab, and here we'll click on account. What you see in the object manager are all the objects that have been set up. These are all standard objects. We have not set up any custom objects so far, but we have the ability to create a custom object. So you can create a custom object or create a custom object from spreadsheet. We'll look at that later in the course. As of now, we'll be dealing with standard objects, and the standard object we'll be looking at today is account. So when you click on account, you're seeing the details of the account object. Click on field and relationships. These are all the fields that you saw in the schema builder and also on the accounts screen. So if you see how the fields have been set up, you have the field label, the field name, and the data type shows what type of the field it is. Whether so account name is of data type name, that is specific and internal to Salesforce. Account number is set up as a text field. Similarly, account owner is a lookup on the user object. We'll come to lookup later in the course, but just suffice it to know that what we are doing here is we are specifying account owner as a field which looks up record in another object and brings up the relevant user who is the account owner for this record. The other type of field is account source. So that's a pick list. A pick list is basically a choice field. You'll have a drop down with multiple fields. So account source could be phone, web, or email. So those are the choices you'll see in pick list. In this video, we'll see how to set up a pick list field as well. Now, when you see a field with __C, it means it is a custom field that was set up by us. So for some other exercise, I would have created this field called active, and it is of type pick list. And when I create this field, Salesforce will append __C to the field name to denote that it is a custom field. The rest of them, as you can see, are all standard fields. Customer priority is again a custom field that has been created as a pick list. So before we create a new field, let's look at one of the fields. Let's look at account source, which is a standard field, and the data type is pick list. If we see how this field has been set up internally by Salesforce, the field label is account source, it's a pick list, and these are the active values for this pick list. So the account source can be web, phone inquiry, partner referral, purchase list, or other. You also see some inactive values. These inactive values will not be visible on the account screen under this field. It is possible to reactivate an inactive value, and it is possible to deactivate an active value. So now let's go back to the account fields and see how to create a new custom field ourselves. When we create a new field, a new custom field, the first thing we have to do is decide what type of a field we want. The field can be an auto number or a formula, a roll-up summary, a lookup relationship or external lookup relationship which links this object to another object. The field can also be a checkbox which gives you a Boolean value for the field, true or false. The field can be of type currency. Remember, currency is a different type of a field as compared to number. So be careful as to what you want. If it is an amount field, select currency. If it is a quantity field, select number. For this example, let us create a pick list. Click next. The field label, let's call it category. Let's enter the values with each value separated by a new line. So our category of account can be SME, or it can be enterprise grade customer or a corporate. If it is a supplier, it could be a raw material supplier, or it could be a packaging supplier. Field name is category. You can put in a helpful description for the field. You could make the field required, but we leave it as it is. And you can also define a default value using either a formula or just a text which shows what the default value is. Next, you can also decide the visibility of this field by selecting which profiles it is visible for. So we're just going to leave it as the defaults. Click next. Now here you decide this field will be visible on which of the page layouts. We'll come to page layouts next and we'll explain this in detail. For now, just leave it as a default and click save. We should have the category field here now. So you can see the category pick list has been saved. If you look at the field again, the field has been set up with a field label of category, field name category. The API name is __ C appended to the field name, and we see the pick list values which have been defined. Now let's go back to the account page and see if the newly defined field shows up. Let's refresh the page. We see category is now available as a field on the page. Let's see the drop-down values. So you can see the values that we defined showing up on the page. Next, we are going to look at the page layouts. So let's go back to the account page. This layout that you're seeing here is defined in the setup object manager. Select the account object and go to the page layout. This is what defines what a page looks like. So let's look at how the sales layout has been configured. As you can see, these are the fields that have been laid out: the account owner, active, upsell opportunity. These are all the fields that we saw on the account page when we were viewing or editing the object. And this is the details section, the account details section. You can also see the related list, which was the other tab. So let's try to create a new page layout. Let's go back to page layout. These are the default page layouts which have already been set up. Let's set up a new page layout. Now, as we discussed, the accounts can be either customers or suppliers. So let's have a different kind of a page layout for both of them. Let's take accounts. Let's take account layout as the existing page layout and create a new page layout called customer account layout. Save that. So you see the default page layout has been copied, and we can make changes to this if we want the customer page layout to be slightly different, and we don't want, let's say we don't want certain fields to be visible for a customer account. We could remove those, or we could configure them separately for the customer account. So for example, the account number could be read only for a customer account because it is pre-configured, or whatever be the reason, but just showing you that you have the capability to configure fields differently for different page layouts. You can even move around the information. So for example, if for customer, certain account information makes sense to be grouped together, you could do that. For now, let's just leave the customer account as it is and save it. So you see a new customer account layout has been created. Let's create another one for supplier. So use the same customer account layout and make supplier account layout. Save that. Copies over the same fields. For suppliers, maybe we don't want account site to be visible because an account site relates to customers. So we remove this field from the page layout. We remove the annual revenue and let's leave it at that. We'll not make too many changes here and we save the supplier account layout. There you go. But how do we know which layout to use when and how do we configure that? Let's come to that. So as we saw, we have two types of accounts, a supplier account and a customer account. So for that purpose, we are going to create two record types. Let's go to record type in the object, new, from the existing record type because there's no other record type configured currently. Let's make it a customer record type. And so when we create a customer record type for account, we may want to make it visible only to certain profiles. So let's say we want to make it visible only to the marketing user and the system administrator. You could do that and click on next. Select the page layout that you want to use for a customer account. So we now use the customer account layout. We keep it as a default for all profiles and save it. You could use different layouts for different profiles if you want, but for now we'll leave it. For the customer record type, you can define different values for each pick list. We just defined a pick list called category, and we saw it had mixed values for both customer and supplier. So let's edit that pick list and we say raw material and packaging are not relevant for customers. So let's remove that, which means when we are creating a record of type customer, the values available in the pick list will only be SME, enterprise, and corporate. Let's save that. And as of now, we'll just leave it at that. You could go in and define different pick list values for each of the fields you see here. Let's go back to record type and also create a record type for supplier. Existing record type master, create a supplier record type, and this time we want to make it available for all profiles. Click next, select the page layout. This time we want to select the supplier account layout. We'll have the same account layout for all profiles and save. Let's again focus on the pick list category. Edit it for supplier. For supplier, we only want raw material and packaging to be available as values in this pick list. So we remove the other values and save it. Now let's see how it works in action. So let's say we go to accounts. When we're trying to create a new account, it now asks us select a record type. What type of account you want to create? If we want to create a supplier account, click next, give it the account name. So let's say it's a raw material account and it's a keychain raw material supplier. If we look at category, you can see only two of the values are showing up for this pick list. We select raw material and let's save that. So we just created a new account of the record type supplier. Let's also create a customer account. Let's see. So we create a new account, customer. Next, if we look at category, we'll not actually create a account. We'll just see if the category is working as expected. We have SME, enterprise, and corporate. So these are the three fields we wanted to appear in the pick list when the account is of record type customer. Let's go back to the object manager and let's look at some of the other values. So, okay, let's look at validation rules. So validation rules will basically check the values that are entered on the screen, and it can apply certain checks before it is submitted or saved into the database. So let's try to create a new validation rule. We'll create a validation rule to check if the category is SME, then the number of employees for that customer account should be less than or equal to 99. So less than 100 employees is considered as a small and medium enterprise. So let's call it SME employee count rule. The rule is active by default. If category is SME, number of employees should be less than 100. So let's insert a formula to check this validation rule. So we'll insert a field under account. We have a field called employees. Insert. So number of employees should be less than 100. So the way we have defined this formula now, let's check the syntax. The field SME does not exist. It has to be a literal value. Check the syntax. Okay, so we've got the formula right now. So what we are checking is if the number of employees is less than 100 and the category pick list is not SME, the formula will evaluate to true, and it will generate an error which says category should be SME if number of employees is less than 100. Let's save this validation rule and let's see how this validation rule works. So let's try to create a new account, type customer, click next. Let's have the category as not SME. Let's try to put the number of employees as 101. Let's try to save that. So that's saved okay because we've selected the category as enterprise and employees are 101. Now, if we try to edit this field and try to make it less than 100 and we keep the category as enterprise, try to save that, it gives us an error. And the error message says category should be SME if number of employees is less than 100. So we cancel that, keep it at 101 and enterprise, which means our validation rule is working fine. The formula evaluates to true if the number of employees is less than 99 and the category is not SME, it creates an error for us. Now we can also define the error location can be at the top of the page or it can be at the actual field. We can define which field, like do we want it to appear next to category? It should be because category should be SME in that case. So let's show this error near the field category. Save this validation rule again. Let's try to edit the number of employees to 99. Save it. And this time it says review the following fields category, and near the category field it says category should be SME if number of employees is less than 100. So we change the category to SME, try to save it, and this time it goes through without an error. So that's how you set up validation rules. So if you click on validation rules, you can see the SME employee count rule is active and we've just tested that it's working as it should. So in this video, we have looked at the object manager. We have looked at the various standard objects in Salesforce. We have seen the fields and relationships, page layout, record types, and validation rules. In the next video, we'll look at how to create a custom object in Object Manager.